Dr. Jones, welcome to DC Today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Tell us about your experience with college and paying for it.
Yeah. So when I went to college, I was one of the lucky ones who received scholarships and financial aid that helped me pay for the cost of tuition at the four-year college I attended, and even through graduate school when I worked as a graduate assistant, my tuition was covered as a result of the work I was able to do. My biggest challenge in paying for college came for the non-tuition costs. Those are books, fees, housing, food. And as a high school student and a first generation college student, I didn't understand and didn't perhaps properly even prepare to pay for those additional costs. And in fact, I can recall my senior year getting the first bill that had the fee for housing, and my scholarship did not cover enough. I thought I couldn't attend college, and I reached out to the scholarship director who had given me the scholarship to say thank you. And unfortunately, I won't be able to come. And they were able to work out a special arrangement for me to work in the dorm and be able to waive my housing fee. I was very grateful that this exception was made, but too often students are unable to even start or continue their education because of that full cost of attendance. And just an example of how much of a force that is for community college students, that's about 80% of the full cost of attendance are those other fees not related to tuition. And too often, families like mine just didn't know in advance.
Dr. Jones, your story is an example of choices that some Black families and students are facing, that tension between pursuing college and contributing and helping out their family. So now we're in the age of COVID-19. Add to that the stress some Black families are facing as to how to even pay for college. How has COVID affected Black students?
Absolutely. So Black students are being affected emotionally, academically, and financially. I think on the emotional side, it's just important to acknowledge Black people, including Black students, are more likely to have family members who've fallen ill, who perhaps have passed away. So there's this collective grief that they're dealing with, and they may not have the same access to be able to grieve together because of social distancing, and even receiving, access to counselors that they might have otherwise received if they were on campus during that time. So that's important to keep in mind, as well as the academics, as colleges have shifted to online to try to protect students. That also means that having a laptop, having broadband internet, high-speed internet become prerequisites to be able to be educated, and many Black students don't, and they're more likely, if they do access the internet, to access it through their phone, which is not adequate to be able to complete coursework. And so again, their academics are definitely being impacted, as well as the financial piece. This isn't just a global pandemic, this is also an economic crisis, over 40 million people applying for unemployment, and understanding that the unemployment rate for Black people is typically even double that of white people. So they're more likely to have families who are going through economic struggle, which means fewer resources to pay for college. And the result is Black families and students being in a limbo. Many, in fact, about 40% of Black students, according to one survey, are saying they're either not going to return in the fall or they're still unsure, compared to just about a quarter of white students in that same position. So in many ways, how they're being affected, we'll have to wait and see, because at this point, they're just not even sure they're going to be able to continue their education.
So while there are protests going on about police brutality, what else should folks be asking for in terms of racism in education? How does that also become part of the conversation with the racial tension and the protests that we're seeing?
Wonderful question. This reminds me of one of my favorite conversations with James Baldwin, where he talks about, I don't know how a white man or a white person may feel, but I do know what their policies are, and I do know what I see in the data. And the same thing can be said of higher ed. A lot of higher ed institutions have put out statements saying Black Lives Matter, which is great. But the question is, why don't you admit Black students if Black Lives Matter? Why don't you hire Black faculty if Black Lives Matter? Why aren't there staff of color or Black staff? Why aren't Black issues and Black history integrated into the curricula? So in terms of what can people ask for, beyond making sure there's changes in policing. In higher education, again, making sure that Black people have access to, especially public colleges and universities that their tax dollars are supporting, as they remain underrepresented at 2-year colleges and 4-year colleges. And also making sure that the institutions they're attending are hiring and promoting and supporting Black staff and Black faculty. Again, Black people have been asking higher ed institutions to address these issues for years, but for too long they've been ignored. So the most important thing is that they ask colleges to follow up their statements with real action.
Absolutely. So everybody stay with us. More with Dr. Jones. And Dr. Jones, when we come back, I want to talk about how COVID-19 is really affecting the admissions process and what our Black students need to know. So everybody stick around. When we come back, we'll have more with Dr. Jones.